I like the community engagement where you meet people where they are, but you have to put the information where they are too.
Welcome to Engaging Cities Fireside Chats. On each episode of the show, I talk to leaders who are paving the way in civic engagement in order to inspire listeners and share strategies that you can implement in your own community. This podcast is proudly supported by our sponsor, Conveo, the engagement platform for plans and policies. Check them out at konveo.com. I'm your host, Kelly Hickler, the Community Manager with Engaging Cities, as well as the founder of Cinovation Studio, which is dedicated to innovative civic education and engagement. Today, I'm chatting with Mark Christensen, who's a senior planner with AVI in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Mark delves into the challenges and successes of establishing an Urban Renewal Authority, focusing, of course, on the importance of community engagement, as well as understanding urban renewal terminologies and the use of tax increment financing. Mark also highlights the significance of transparency, technology, and diverse engagement methods in improving community buy-in for all types of urban planning projects. Let's go. Hey, Mark. Welcome.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, me too. And it's been we were just talking, it's been at least almost 3 years, or exactly. Yeah, 3 years since we last saw each other at the APA conference. And then prior to that, it had been a few years since we worked together in Centennial, Colorado.
Yeah, I left Centennial in the fall of 2019. So it's over 5 years ago.
Yeah, crazy. Well, good to see your face again and catch up with you a bit.
Yeah.
So I know that you started a new job last year or this year.
Yep.
Earlier this year. So why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, who you work for, what got you into city planning, and what is it that you do now?
Yeah, for sure. So, I am originally from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I was born and raised here, and I'm actually back here now. So for my undergrad, went to the University of Wyoming and studied geography. And geography is kind of one of those things that in a lot of undergrad programs, you can find planning through geography. Sometimes you can have some planning classes. At the University of Wyoming, you could do a concentration in planning. So I took an environmental planning class my sophomore year, and that's where I found planning. And then that led me to do internship with the city of Laramie. That made me kind of decide that this was the profession that I wanted to follow. So once I graduated from the University of Wyoming, I knew I wanted to do planning, but I didn't know exactly where. So I did a year in Oregon, and I did an AmeriCorps program out there. It's called Rare Resource Assistance for Rural Environments. It's a killer program. They're in their 30th year. I was rare year 23. So that was about 7 years ago. It was great. It's loosely based around planning. So you might have an economic development position. You might do some Main Street work. You might do tourism-based stuff. Or you also might just be a planning tech type job where you review building permits and for zoning compliance and those sorts of things. But when I was in Oregon, I decided I wanted to come back to the Rocky Mountain region. That led me to CU Denver, where I did the Master of Urban and Regional Planning. Started that in 2017. Had an internship with Clarion Associates. They do a lot of comprehensive plans and zoning code updates. Worked with them for my first year as an intern, and then my second year, while I was in grad school, went down to Centennial and got my local government experience. We worked on Centennial Next, the comprehensive plan. So as an intern, I worked on that. And then towards the 6 months into my intern, there was a position open that I ultimately took, and that's when I started doing the sort of planner grunt work, answering the phones, getting some neighbor complaints, making sure people were building their sheds to the proper setback.
Very important.
It's very important. So worked with Kelly and Michael, who was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. So that was a great time and got a lot of experience. I think one of the things that people don't realize when you have that entry-level planner experience is how well you get to, go through zoning codes and understand all the different intricacies that are part of it. But about, after I graduated, my wife and she was a girlfriend at the time, but we decided we wanted to move back up home, and there was a good job opportunity to be the long-range planner for the city of Cheyenne. So I jumped on that. While I was at the city of Cheyenne, I got to take a lot of projects through council. So that was a great experience. We did some large-scale rezonings. We did some urban renewal development, which was kind of the first in the state in a long time. And then also lots of big projects that were going on at the time. A couple of years into that, wanted to get my feet wet in the private sector. So I jumped over to Ayers Associates. They are a kind of medium-sized engineering firm. They have about 250 employees, and they're based out of Wisconsin, have 8 different offices. The Cheyenne office was just me and another planner. So it was very planning focused. We did a lot of projects in rural Colorado, rural Wyoming. And that was some great experience to get my feet wet on the private sector. But that led me to realize I did want to do some more local work. So I joined AVI in February. We do a lot of entitlement work, but we also do some long range plans too. So worked on the Belvoir Ranch master plan for the city, currently kicking off a economic development plan for the town of Mountain View, Wyoming. It's a huge population, 1,200 people. So we're looking at some economic development solutions for those folks, and then bringing some new developments into Cheyenne as well.
Awesome. That's quite the resume that you have.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's so cool. You started with you said AmeriCorps, is that right?
Yep.
AmeriCorps. Okay, AmeriCorps. I was thinking of Rare. And that was something that I looked into, gosh, I think when I was still an undergrad or somewhere along the line, that was something that I had looked into, but I never pursued it. So it's nice to talk to someone who actually went through with it and had a good experience. I wish I did. Is there an age limit? Awesome. I want to still do it.
No, you can still do it. It was cool because I liken it. It's domestic Peace Corps. Like it's you go to underserved communities, and they pay you a wage that is similar to those people that you're working with. So you're typically below the poverty level wage wise. So just to kind of get that experience and be able to relate with those people that you're working with. And our program was cool because a lot of people were fresh out of college. You had to at least have a 4-year degree, but you were either fresh out of college. Some people did it so they could relocate to Oregon, and then some people were doing it as like a career change too. So
okay. Oh, neat. Okay, I might still look into that. We'll see. So today you told me that you wanted to maybe talk about the work that you did when you were with the city of Cheyenne.
Yeah.
On their Urban Renewal Authority.
Yeah.
So I'll let you kick it off and talk about what you did and what was involved.
Yeah. So when I started working at the city, one of the funny things when I started at the city, I started in November of 2019, and then 5 months later, the world shut down. So a lot of that first little bit while working at the city was kind of figuring that stuff out. But when we were kind of coming out of the pandemic, we had a new mayor, and this mayor came on. His sister is actually the executive director of the Urban Renewal Authority in Arvada, Colorado.
Okay.
So he had some knowledge about urban renewal, but there wasn't really any knowledge at the city or really in the state at the time, of how to set up an urban renewal authority and how to use the powers. That really what we wanted to do is use tax increment financing, because there were a number of areas in the community that could use a little bit of love. And there was just a financial gap. And using tax increment financing is what we wanted to do to bridge that gap and have these places redeveloped. So the mayor kind of charged me and my mentor, Charles Bloom, he's the planning director at the city. They directed us to look into setting up an urban renewal authority, going through the state statutes, seeing what was required, seeing how you go about setting up your board, see how you go about designating an area to have an urban renewal project, and all those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm. No
With
big
that
deal.
said,
No pressure.
yeah. And so it was a really cool exercise for me, being a young planner, because we set up the URA in 2021. So I was just 2 years out of grad school. So it was a really cool experience to set up an urban renewal authority, working with the planning director to do that. And when I was at the city, I was the long range planner. So nobody really knew what that means. So I got kind of the other duties that were like, oh, who could do that? Everybody's like, oh, yeah, Mark could do that. So,
Other duties as assigned.
exactly. So what we did is kind of went through the state statutes. And that being said, no other place in Wyoming really has a URA that's currently operating at that time. So there were some areas that technically had one that didn't dissolve, but they weren't really operating and using tax increment financing or anything like that. So we went through the state statutes, and they are pretty archaic. They're very 1960s language. So there's a lot of terms in there. Urban renewal in the 50s and 60s was used for a lot of bad things.
Yes.
You think about displacement, you think about clearance of homes, neighborhoods, freeway expansion, that sort of thing. So a lot of that language is still integrated into the state statutes.
Okay, like blight,
Blight, slum,
Oh God, yeah.
displacement of, like, one of the requirements for an urban renewal plan is that you have to have a plan to relocate people that are displaced by your project. And we weren't doing any of that in Cheyenne. So when we went through, we looked at all the requirements. So in order to stand up an urban renewal authority in the state of Wyoming, you have to say there are one or more blighted areas in your community. So we did a blight study, found the different conditions of blight. There's like 13 different criteria, kind of in a paragraph form, where there's, connection of streets is poor, deteriorating buildings, danger by fire, crumbling infrastructure, those sorts of things. And if you find those conditions, you can designate an area as blighted.
Wow. Okay. I'm so curious, what percentage of communities in the US would meet the criteria as being blighted?
I think with the Wyoming statutes, it's the way that they're written is it is easy to find a condition of blight. And
okay.
I don't know if that's purposeful or not in the 60s, but just even, poor platting or weird ownership records or something like that. And all those things can lead to a condition of blight. And especially in downtown Cheyenne, a lot of downtown Cheyenne is under the original city plat from 1867. And there's a lot of janky partial combinations and those sorts of weird legal descriptions. And all those sorts of things can act as a condition of blight.
Okay, gotcha. And then you were saying that you have to have those findings, you have to use that terminology in your report.
Correct. Yeah. So you have to, the city council has to adopt a resolution that says this area is blighted, this area is blighted or slummed. We opted for blight instead of slum.
Yeah, I don't picture that going over well.
Yes, so that's exactly what happened. So we went through, we adopted these areas as slum and blight, and there was a specific area in the city that we wanted to utilize the tax increment financing. It was the Hitching Post Hotel. and it's located kind of on the western gateway to the city of Cheyenne. And the Hitching Post used to be this extravagant hotel. A lot of people used to call it the second capital, and it's because when people would come to Cheyenne, the state capital is Cheyenne in Wyoming. But when people would come to Cheyenne, they'd go to the legislature at the state capitol, but then everybody would stay at the Hitching Post. So a lot of those, maybe some of the nitty gritty details and some of the legislation were crafted at the Hitching Post. Maybe even these urban renewal statutes were crafted at the Hitching Post.
Oh, what a cool story.
Yeah. And it used to be this really cool place, but I think it caught fire the first time in 2010. And I was still in high school, but you could see the smoke from everywhere in town. So it caught fire, ended up being arson and insurance fraud, that sort of thing. And then it caught fire again while we were doing this plan, which was kind of funny, but it sat there for a while, western gateway to the community. So we really wanted to redevelop this. And one of the things that was an issue at the site is there was a lot of asbestos remediation that needed to take place. There were some old water lines that needed to be relocated to kind of make the site more usable and feasible with current construction standards and that sort of thing. So we designated the whole area as blight. And in doing so, we brought that resolution forward to the city council. It was designated as blight. And then we started doing a plan and project. And when we did the plan and project, even though it wasn't required by state statutes, we notified the neighbors that there was going to be an urban renewal plan and project. However, when we sent out that notification, the people that were located in the area, sorry, my phone's ringing. But
we couldn't hear it.
Okay. The people that were located in the area realized that they were in an area that was already designated as blight. So through the city process, through the URA process, you're not required to notify the people that are within the area that it is slumped or blighted. And I think that's kind of a remnant of those 1960s era state statutes where community engagement was not as important.
Right. Or purposeful. It was on purpose to exclude people from the process. Yeah.
Exactly. So once we sent out this notification that there was a URA plan and project in the area, some of those neighbors came forward and they had concerns that their property was designated as blighted without ever being notified. And with a term like blight, it's something that people don't really know what it means. Is this recorded against my property? Is it going to hurt my property values? Is it something that is going to just detract from somebody wanting to develop my property? Is there an issue with my property that I don't know? Those sorts of things, because it's such a term that has negative connotations with it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so when we were bringing this URA plan and project forward, a lot of those neighbors that were notified came forward at these hearings and were concerned with the whole process. They weren't necessarily opposed to the project, but they were concerned with the process. And we had to really work with the neighbors, then the applicant, and then the city council to help them understand that this designation of slum and blight was more of something that allowed them to move forward with the urban renewal plan and project, which ultimately is a good thing because you can utilize some of the urban renewal tools, use tax increment financing, that sort of thing. But if you look at the state statutes and you see, oh, I'm blight, what does urban renewal mean? And then it has some of those other actions that you could undertake with the 1960s language, with relocation of families, those sorts of things. It's really scary.
Oh my gosh, what are they doing? Yeah. I imagine that.
So when we did that, it was really difficult to get that through the process. And then we ultimately did bridge the gap with those community members, help them understand exactly what was going on here. That it was really just a term that allows you to move forward with the city and also bridge the gap. And then, towards the end of it, they're happy that their project is within an urban renewal area because it entices some developers because they know they can use tax increment financing.
So in retrospect, what
is something or maybe a few things that you would have done differently?
So one of the things that we wish we did differently is we wish we held kind of a preliminary public meeting. And we wish we did that. So then we did do that. We had another urban renewal planning project come into the city. It's a 15th Street corridor. And the first thing that we did was we notified every single property owner that was within that area that was planned to be determined as blighted. We sent them a mailer. We had a short overview mailed to them as well of what a blight determination is, what it means for you. And we held a public meeting in the area. I always think it's important to hold the public meeting where they are instead of over at the city building or whatever. So we held a public meeting over there and went over the different conditions of slum and blight that we found, the different urban renewal projects that we wanted to do. This is a sort of historic area in the community, and we wanted to be able to use some tax increment financing for facade improvements and historic building rehabilitation and stuff like that, which somebody has actually done. But we held this meeting, recorded some information, put it up online, had a project webpage, those sorts of things that went over all these different things, really got in front of the scary terminology that's used in state statutes and brought it forward with them and went through the blight process. And it was really successful. And we gained a lot of support for the project by doing that preliminary community engagement rather than the opposition that we saw with the other project.
I see. Okay, so you turned the second go around, you turned it into a success story. That's nice that you applied some of your own lessons learned immediately to the next project, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things about community engagement in general is when you have that purposeful community engagement on the front end of things, you really get that community buy-in. I think when you have purposeful community engagement, that's not necessarily just a requirement in your zoning code or a requirement in state statute, but you have that meaningful interaction on the front end. It goes beyond the check the box mentality that a lot of people think when they see some community engagement, and you really get that buy-in. And I think when you think about these, specifically urban renewal, you're trying to illustrate to the property owners in the community what it can do for you, rather than what harm it could cause.
Absolutely. Or instead of what it can do for you instead of what it can do to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so a question that I ask all my guests is, in your opinion, what is one small change that local governments can make to improve community engagement?
I really think the transparency aspect is really important, and just having a better overview to the community of process. I think a lot of times when the community comes out for a project, most oftentimes when a community member comes out, it's in opposition. There are people that come out that are for projects, and it does happen. But a lot of things that bring community members out is opposition. And a lot of times that doesn't happen until there's a specific project proposed. And I think one of the things that process-wise the local government could do is really inform the community on when it's most important to come out. And oftentimes, you want to bring them out during the comprehensive planning process, when you're designating future land use designations, those sorts of things, because that'll really tell the community what could be located here. But even more so is when a zone change comes through. And a lot of times a zone change might have some requirements to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. But I think a lot of times when a citizen gets a notification that a zone is going from RR to CB, that doesn't really mean anything to them.
Right. Yeah.
And I think we really need to do a better job of illustrating, okay, we're going to CB, but what can happen under that CB? And the current developer might be looking to rezone it to CB to do maybe a daycare. However, if that development proposal falls through and the property is already rezoned to CB, something like a gas station could potentially go there, commercial use and intensive commercial use that's allowed under that zoning. So I think procedurally, if the government could do a better job of illustrating when a zone change happens, these are the different things that could potentially happen at this location. I don't know whether that would be a neighborhood meeting type requirement, or maybe just more information in the mailer. I think there's a lot of opportunities to expand this with technology. One of the things the city of Cheyenne is exploring is providing QR codes on our public information signs. So when there's a public notice, you can go up and scan it. I think you could put, this is going from RR to CB. You could scan CB and see all the uses and, scaling, massing of all the potential uses that could be located in that zone.
Yeah, I really like that use of the QR code, because there's too much information. You can't possibly include all the relevant information on the sign. It would have to be huge. So that is a great use of technology to help with engagement. Is there any other types of technology that you've used or that you're excited about how it could be used to improve engagement?
Yeah, one of the things that I've really enjoyed using, and I've seen a lot of places use it too, is utilizing ArcGIS story maps to kind of paint the picture of a planning process. And you could use them for more than that as well. But we've used ArcGIS story maps here at AVI. We've used it for our Belleville Ranch master plan. And it's really a one-stop shop. And the thing that I like about the ArcGIS story maps is you can really make them a narrative and show the community how you have progressed with the project over time, show them where you started, where you're going, and then you can always link your final documents in it. And there's opportunities for engagement with public feedback, some surveys, polling, that sort of thing too. And they're also something that you can link with a QR code to share that information as well. So it's a good tool to show the process. We've liked to use them in our planning processes. I think you could also use them in the illustrating what developments happening in town. City of Cheyenne does a good job of keeping up to date the current developments in town. And I don't know that they currently do it, but you could link that with a QR code too, to where you scan the public notice sign and then it links you to the map and you can see all the other developments in town. So I think we're doing a better job about that, getting more. You really have to put it, I like the community engagement where you meet people where they are, but you have to put the information where they are too.
Oh, that's a good way to phrase it. Yeah, we talk a lot about meeting in their neighborhood or whatnot, but when you're not physically meeting with them, giving them the information in a way, in a location that is accessible to them, not just publishing it in the newspaper.
Yeah, a lot of our notice requirements, required the newspaper. And I think too, when you put, a lot of times when people go to your city website, they are looking for paying their utility bill or maybe looking at a council agenda, that sort of thing. They're not necessarily getting into the planning and development webpage. So if you're able to share some of that on social media, people still use Facebook here and all the other sorts of social media too. It's a huge advantage.
Yeah, I'm so curious if any city has had success with using TikTok.
I don't know. And I've actually heard of the city of Cheyenne actually talked about doing a little bit, but that was kind of before everybody got scared of TikTok.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I know. But that would be so cool. We need a Gen Z person or Gen Alpha, or no, this Gen Alpha is still too young, I guess. Gen Z. We need a Gen Z to take TikTok, the city's TikTok account, and make public engagement go viral.
Exactly.
All right, Mark. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to share about your experience working on the Urban Renewal Authority, or any of your experience or words of wisdom that you wanted to share? Did we get it?
I think we hit it pretty good. I think one of the things, as a planner is really being intentional with your community engagement. And also, I think one of my favorite formats, just in general, community engagement wise, is an open house. And I know some of the older generations, they kind of expect more of a formal presentation, and you to go over the points and talking at them instead of talking with them. I really prefer that talking with them approach. A lot of times when I'm at an open house meeting, yeah, you do have people that come up and are vocal about the boards, but I like to find somebody who seems like they might be a little bit more quiet and pick their brain a little bit too. And it really gets some of the voices that don't typically come out and speak. So it really allows for a wide breadth of feedback when you have those varying different means of public engagement. So I think it's not always a one size fits all, but rather let's do an open house. Maybe we do have a formal presentation as well. Then we have our QR codes where people can share feedback. And then some people might only want to submit feedback electronically as well. So and it's important that not one of those different modes of feedback is more important than one another, because everybody communicates differently.
Oh, excellent point. You have to provide a menu of options.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Mark, where can people reach out to you if they want to follow up or have questions for you?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm here at AVI in Cheyenne. My email is mchristensen@avipc.com. And we are AVI, we are not AVI. We've been called AVI before, but that's maybe an easy way to remember that it's avipc.com. And then phone number is 307-637-6017.
Oh, awesome.
You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to chat with anybody on LinkedIn too.
Great. Okay, I'll include that in the show notes. I like you to look at your card. I'm hoping that you looked at it for the end of the email address, not remembering how to spell your name.
I remember when I worked at Centennial, Jenna always told me that I need to spell my last name more slowly, because she's like, you have 11 letters in your last name, you gotta spell it slowly. So maybe I was using it as a cue to speak slower.
Got you. Okay, good. That's a great tip, Jenna.
It was so funny. Yeah.
That I need to get her on the show as well.
You should.
I'm gonna get every Centennial employee on the show.
That'd be awesome.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for spending time with me, and it was good to catch up with you. And thanks for sharing all of your very insightful tips with our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And it was great chatting with you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, as always, thank you listeners for tuning in, and thanks again to our generous sponsor, Conveo. Head on over to engagingcities.org, where you can find additional episodes and other helpful resources related to community engagement. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.